Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala ashrafil mursaleen, nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman kathira, amma ba'du. First and foremost, forgive me for the long delay on the class. I had a lot of things come up in the last couple of weeks, so I was unable to have the classes on those days of the previous weeks. Today we're going to cover Hadith number 44 from the book, The Concise Speech of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Although it's a short Hadith, it's a very impactful, meaningful, very beneficial Hadith for building a community. And it entails some of the fiqh that surrounds the suckling of a child by a woman who is not the mother. The suckling of a child from a woman who is not the mother. We're going to make it as basic as possible so we can understand this issue. At the same time, try to give it its haqq. عن عائشة رضي الله عنها عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال الرضاعة تحرم الولادة. And he says that the suckling, or speaking of the suckling child, in the situation where he is suckling from this woman, it makes impermissible. And he uses the word yuharrim, but it is known that he's talking about it makes impermissible the marriage of the people who are impermissible to marry by blood. So those who are born in certain families cannot marry certain people, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, حُرِمَتْ عَلَيْكُمْ أُمَّهَاتُكُمْ وَبَنَاتُكُمْ وَأَخْوَاتُكُمْ وَعَمَّاتُكُمْ إِلَى نهاية الآية, until the end of the ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, forbidden for you for marriage are your mothers, are your daughters, are your sisters, your mother's sisters, your brother's daughters, your sister's daughters, your foster mothers from suckling. So the child who weaned from a woman who is not his biological mother, if he drank from her milk, it is impermissible for him to ever marry this woman. We're going to go into the amount of times, a little bit of the difference of opinion on the amount of times the person has to suckle from this woman. And then it continues, he goes on, he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your foster sisters. So now you can't marry the woman who suckled you, who weaned you. You can't marry the daughters of that woman who weaned you. Your wives' mothers. You can't marry your wife's mother, ever. You can never marry your wife's mother. In the West, they do this. They marry the daughter passes away, the mother's attractive, they marry the mother. Or vice versa. They marry the mother, and the mother passes away, and the daughter, she's available and she wants to marry them. In Islam, we can't do this. It's impermissible. It's your stepdaughters whom are under your guardianship, and to those whom previously were mentioned, women who previously married your sons. So the wife or the mother, she can't marry so the father can't marry the daughter of the wife of his son, if the son passed away, or if the son didn't pass away. As long as the son consummated the marriage, it is not permissible for him to marry that female ever. She's forever. All of those people that we mentioned right there, they are forever from the maharamak. They don't have to cover in front of you. All right? They can travel with you. and you can never marry them. Unless something enters your heart from sickness and deviance, then you don't have to separate or distinguish yourself or separate yourselves from them. They are your daughters, your sisters, your mothers, your aunts, your family ties through either marriage or either blood or by the weaning process. هذه الآية هي التي هي آية تحريم المحارم من نسب وما يتبعه من الرضاع ومحارم بالسحر كما قال ابن أبي حاتم. So Ibn Abi Hatim, and this is Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Kathir, he's mentioning that Ibn Abi Hatim, he said that in this ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about this is the verse that makes it impermissible to marry people who are connected to you by blood, or that which follows that through the weaning process, or through marriage. You're married to Fatima, Zainab is more beautiful than Fatima. You find out after you marry, you're like, man, subhanAllah, Zainab is more beautiful. You can't marry Fatima as long as you're married to. You can't marry Zainab as long as you're married to Fatima. And the likes of this. And this teaches people, it teaches the community how to have balance, guidelines, right? Because once we have guidelines, we don't go into deviance. We don't become deviant, sexual deviant, or mentally deviant. طيب اختلف الأئمة في عدد الرضاعات المحرمة. So the scholars, they differed upon the number of times a child has to suckle from the woman to be considered a son. To be considered a son, or to be considered a daughter through the weaning process. فذهب الذاهبون إلى أنه يحرم مجرد الرضاعة لعموم هذه الآية. So he says, some of the scholars, they went and they took the position that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He didn't put or stipulate a amount of times. So they took the opinion that even if it's one time, he's considered to be a son to that woman. He can never marry her. He can never marry her daughters. And he is a son to that woman through the weaning process. And likewise, we also mentioned that she doesn't have to cover in front of him. This is 20 years later after they, the weaning, the suckle process happened. 20 years later, he's considered to be like a son to her. Her daughters are considered to be a sisters to him. وهذا قول مالك. Imam Malik, this was his opinion. وعن also Ibn Umar also took that position. وعن Ibn Umar وإليه ذهب سعيد بن مسيب وعروة بن زبير والزهري. So they had this opinion that it was only one time. وقال الآخرون لا يحرم أقل من 3 رضعات لما ثبت في صحيح. And then some of the other scholars, they took the opinion that he cannot be considered a child to her unless it is more than 3 or more. He suckles with this woman 3 or more times. So he says, أقل من 3 رضعات لما ثبت في صحيح, and this is based upon a hadith that is narrated by Imam Muslim. صحيح المسلم من طريق هشام بن عروة عن أبيه أن عائشة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا تحرم المصة والمصتان. He says that a person, the child, does not become from the prohibited people for marriage for less than or for 1 suckle or 2 suckles. This is the hadith that Aisha, this was her opinion. And some of the other mufassirin and some of the other fuqaha, they took that opinion. وقال قتادة, Ibn Qatada, he brings another narration. He says, عن أبي خليل عن عبد الله بن حارث عن فضل قالت قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تحرم الرضعة ولا رضعتان ولا مصة ولا مصتان. And he says that, in this narration, he says that it didn't, what didn't make it impermissible for the child to marry the other child, the boy to marry the girl, doesn't make it impermissible by one suckle or two suckling. And then in another narration it says, وَلَا تَحَرَّمْ إِمْلَاجَةً وَلَا إِمْلَاجَتَانِ. So two suckling, one suckling or two suckling. Basically saying that it has to be a numerous amount of suckles and it should be three or more. Three or more. Some of the other scholars, they took it to be the suckling process should be that which extends to a year. If it extends to a year, then it could be considered the son or the brother or the sister to her offspring, the son to the woman and the brother and sister to the offspring. He's not a blood relative, but he's a relative through the suckling process, which doesn't allow him to marry from the offspring of that woman. Ever. Wallahu alam. Like I said, it's a short hadith. But what we want to cover, we have to cover all the hadith. And what it shows is how these 50 hadith, the religion is based on. So there's a place for every issue, every social issue, every issue of the tenets of Iman or the tenets of faith of Islam or the issues of fiqh, they all some way come back to these 50 hadith. This hadith in particular shows the ability of the wujub, the obligation of strengthening family ties. Strengthening family ties to build a community. Right? So what we see is in this society, most people wouldn't want their child to be suckled by a woman that is not his mother. But in the Islamic society, in our culture, should be based upon Islamic culture. Not Arab culture, not black culture, but correct culture. And what we see is that in Islam, any culture that's based upon Islamic tenets, it will be correct. So here it shows the importance of community and sticking together and allowing yourself and knowing who are your family members. Some of us might have sisters through weaning process we don't even know about. Or brothers in weaning process you don't even know about. And one of the reasons why the scholars say it's not permissible, and in Islam altogether it says it's not permissible to change your name, is because if you change your name, there's a possibility that you will marry your sister. You can marry your sister. If you ever disconnect, your father has a child you don't know about, and all she knows is that her family is Browns, or her family is Gonzalez's, or her family is Abdurrahman's, right? So she looks for her family, and she sees this handsome man, and she marries this handsome man. And the reality is because he changed his name, he's her brother. And she didn't know and they didn't know. The marriage is impermissible. No matter how long they've been together, the marriage is impermissible. You see, so Islam took all measures possible to protect the health and the family structure of every Muslim household. What do you think will be the outcome if you marry your sister, the children? You see? Have birth defects. You see how Islam took the measures to make sure that doesn't happen. But we, unfortunately, sometimes we go against that which we don't have any knowledge of, and Islam is built upon knowledge, and we find ourselves doing things that are incorrect or falling into something that will lead to something that is more difficult or more of a harm, and ultimately bringing more of a problem on the community. Now you have to raise this child who is born with birth defects because you put them in a situation by not following the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد لا إله إلا أنت وأستغفرك ونتوب إليك.